During my termination meeting, he smirked and said, "We could hire 3 junior engineers for what you're making, nothing personal, just cutting costs." My name is Victor Hale. I'm 55 years old and have been the lead systems engineer at Veltria Housing for 18 years. I built their entire infrastructure from the ground up, designed every expansion, and maintained everything so flawlessly that the executives forgot how dependent the company was on me, until they decided they could no longer afford me. Sitting across from me was Graham Vickers, the new CTO who had only been with the company for 6 months. He was 42, wore stylish glasses, and held an MBA from Cornell. He was brought in to modernize operations, which apparently meant starting by letting go of the most experienced staff. Diane from HR slid a folder across the table and said, "The severance package is generous, 2 months' salary plus your accrued vacation time." I nodded, accepted the folder, and replied, "Thank you, is that all?" Graham looked almost disappointed, perhaps expecting me to argue or threaten legal action, something to justify telling the board how difficult I was being. "What would you want me to say?" "Most people in your position have questions or concerns." I shrugged. "It seems pretty straightforward." Graham exchanged a glance with Diane, both puzzled by my calm demeanor. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't calm. I was simply finished. "There's a difference. We'd appreciate your help during the transition," Graham went on. "The new engineering team will need some guidance on the system architecture, maybe a consulting arrangement for a few weeks." "I'll think about it," I said, knowing I wouldn't. We shook hands. I packed up my desk without complaint. 18 years of work fit into a single cardboard box. I nodded goodbye to a few co-workers who avoided eye contact, clearly worried they might be next. Walking to my truck in the parking garage, my phone buzzed. A text from Alan, the database admin I hired 12 years ago. "This is Vic, the whole team's freaking out." I didn't reply. Later at home, I sat on my deck overlooking Lake Ontario, sipping bourbon and watching the sunset cast a copper glow on the water. My wife Elaine placed a hand on my shoulder. "What will you do now?" she asked. I shrugged. "Something will come up." What Graham hadn't understood, and never bothered to learn, was that I hadn't just built their systems. I had personally coded large sections with minimal documentation, because the company always refused to fund a proper documentation team. Only I knew the deep redundancies, hidden security layers, and complex network architecture, and I had no intention of explaining it to anyone. I started at Veltria Housing back when it was called Bayview Properties, a small real estate company managing 4 apartment complexes with a dozen employees. Their entire IT setup consisted of 2 desktops, a fax machine, and a dial-up internet connection. The owner, Harold Bay, hired me away from a consulting job in Syracuse. "We're expanding," he said. "I need someone to build us something solid." Over 18 years, I transformed that rudimentary system into an integrated property management platform handling everything, from tenant applications and background checks to automated maintenance requests and rent collection across 63 properties in 4 states. I built it piece by piece, adapting and upgrading as the company grew. When Harold retired 5 years ago, his son Justin sold the company to a private equity firm that rebranded it as Veltria Housing. They kept me on, impressed by what I had created, but things began to change. New executives arrived with new priorities. Quarterly targets overshadowed long-term stability. Warning signs appeared slowly. First, they rejected my proposal for a documentation team. "Too expensive," they said. "We'll get to it next quarter." That quarter never came. Then they brought in consultants, young MBA grads who talked about disrupting property management and moving to cloud solutions. They sat through my architecture briefings with glazed eyes, then recommended off-the-shelf systems that couldn't integrate with our custom infrastructure. I pushed back, explaining why their ideas wouldn't work and showing them the custom code that made our system unique. Eventually, I was no longer invited to planning meetings Elaine noticed before I did. "They're pushing you out," she said one night over dinner. "You need to prepare." I shrugged it off. "They need me. No one else understands how everything works together." "That might be the problem," she replied 6 months ago. "They hired Graham as CTO. He came from a banking software company and immediately started pushing for standardization and legacy system replacement. He hired 3 junior engineers fresh out of college, had them shadow me, asking questions about the system I answered. But I knew they didn't grasp the complexity. How could they? It had taken me years to understand all the interdependencies and build the redundancies that kept everything running smoothly through issues. Last week, Graham stopped by my office. "Quick meeting tomorrow morning," he said casually. "Just a quarterly check-in." I should have seen it coming 2 weeks after I was fired. My phone rang while I was updating my resume. It was Graham Vickers. I let it go to voicemail. "Victor, it's Graham. We're having problems with the tenant portal. The junior team is working on it, but struggling with your code architecture. Could you call us back? Just a quick consultation." I deleted the message and went back to my resume. 3 more calls came that day, each voicemail sounding more desperate by evening. Alan texted me. "System's been down all day. Maintenance requests aren't processing. Graham's losing it." The next morning, Diane from HR called. "Victor, I hope you're well. We want to discuss a temporary consulting arrangement to help with system issues. The pay is generous." I picked up. "How generous?" I asked. $300 an hour, minimum 4 hours. "I'll think about it and get back to you," I said. Then hung up, sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the lake. Elaine placed a coffee cup before me. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking they're finally realizing what I'm worth." Over the next 3 days, the calls kept coming. From Graham, Diane, even Justin Bayou, still on the board. The tenant portal was down. Maintenance scheduling was erroring out, and automatic payment processing failed, affecting thousands of residents. I didn't reply to any of them. On the 4th day, I got an email from Devlin Systems, a regional competitor of Veltria. They managed fewer properties but had been growing fast. The message came directly from their director of technology, Lawrence Devlin himself. It read, "Victor, I've heard about your situation at Veltria. We've admired your work from a distance for a long time. Would you be open to discussing some opportunities with us? We're looking to upgrade our entire property management infrastructure." I replied and scheduled a meeting for the next day. That evening, as Elaine and I were getting dinner ready, the doorbell rang. It was Graham Vickers, standing on my porch. His designer glasses were slightly crooked, and his usually perfect suit looked rumpled. "Victor, I'm sorry to show up unannounced," he said, "but there's an emergency. The whole system is down. Nothing's working. The team can't figure out the problem or how to fix it. The board authorized me to offer you a hefty consulting fee, $500 per hour, whatever it takes." I leaned against the door frame, thinking about the cardboard box in my garage. 18 years of work reduced to a few keepsakes. I thought about nothing personal, just cost-cutting, and about the documentation team proposal that was never approved. "I'm sorry to hear about your troubles," I said quietly, "but I have an interview tomorrow. Something will come up." I shut the door on his surprised expression and went back to cooking. For the first time since being fired, a calm clarity settled over me. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just clarity. I wasn't going to fix what they'd broken. The meeting with Lawrence Devlin went better than I expected. We met at a coffee shop downtown in Rochester, away from either company's offices. "I've followed your work for years," Lawrence said, stirring his coffee. "The property management system you built at Veltria is legendary in our industry. Nobody else comes close." "Thank you," I replied. "It took time. That's what I want to talk about. Time. We want to build something like that, but don't want to start from scratch. We need someone who understands the architecture, the integration points, the security layers, someone who can build us something better than what's out there. I'm interested, I added. Lawrence smiled. Good, because I'm ready to offer you the position of Chief Systems Architect, full benefits, stock options, and a salary 20% higher than what you earned at Veltria. It was a solid offer, almost too good. Why me? I asked. There are younger, cheaper engineers out there. Lawrence laughed. You sound like your former employer. We tried that route, hired 3 bright young engineers from top schools. They built a sleek, modern system that crashes whenever more than 100 users log in at once. We don't want cheap, we want reliable. I accepted the offer the next day. Meanwhile, Veltria's problems worsened. Alan kept me updated through occasional texts. They had partially restored the system, but critical functions still failed. They even hired an expensive consulting firm specializing in legacy system recovery. A week after I started at Devlin, Graham called again. Victor, please, this is serious. We've lost access to payment records from the past 3 months. Tenants are complaining about incorrect charges. The consultants say they need your input on the database structure. I was tempted to ignore him, but something made me answer. Graham, I'm employed elsewhere now. I have an exclusive contract. I'm afraid I can't help you. We'll double whatever they're paying you for just 2 days of your time. It's not about the money. Then what? Revenge? Are you enjoying watching us struggle? I paused, choosing my words carefully. No, Graham, I'm not enjoying it, but you made a business decision. You decided my experience wasn't worth the cost. Now you're discovering what that means. The board wants to talk about bringing you back, full salary plus a signing bonus. For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it faded fast. Going back would solve nothing. The same executives who deemed me expendable would be waiting for the next chance to cut costs. I appreciate the offer, but I've committed to Devlin Systems. Graham's voice grew colder. You know there could be legal issues if we find out you intentionally made our systems hard to maintain. Non-compete clauses, intellectual property concerns. There it was, the threat I'd expected. The system is exactly as it was when the company denied my request for a documentation team, I replied evenly. Every line of code belongs to Veltria. As per my contract, I took nothing but my experience. Feel free to have your lawyers contact mine. I hung up, my hands trembling, not from fear, but anger I hadn't let surface before the accusation that I sabotaged them was the last insult. At Devlin, I was starting fresh, building systems properly from the ground up, with full documentation, training programs for the engineering team, and redundancies to prevent the kind of disaster Veltria was now facing. I wasn't looking back anymore, but I wasn't going to help them either. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. About a month after I joined Devlin Systems, an unexpected visitor showed up in my new office. Alan, my former database administrator, stood awkwardly in the doorway carrying a laptop bag. Got time for lunch? He asked. Over sandwiches at a deli nearby? During lunch, Alan filled me in on the chaos at Veltria. It's worse than you think, he said quietly, despite the noisy crowd. They've lost access to historical data going back 3 years. The backup systems are corrupted somehow. The consulting firm says they might have to rebuild everything from scratch. I wasn't surprised. The backup system had multiple redundancies and security protocols that had to be followed precisely. Missing one step caused the entire process to fail, designed to protect tenant data from unauthorized access. That's not all, Alan continued. I found something while trying to help the consultants understand the payment processing system. Graham had been planning your termination for months. He met with the board, convincing them that your custom infrastructure was too expensive to maintain. How do you know this? I asked. Alan pulled out his laptop and showed me a string of emails from the system archives. Conversations between Graham and the board discussing the legacy staff reduction plan and specifically naming me as the first target. He told them they could replace you with cheaper engineers and move to off-the-shelf solutions within 6 months, Allen said. He projected annual savings over $1 million. I went through the emails with a strange sense of detachment. One line from Graham caught my eye. Hale's custom systems are unnecessarily complex. He's made himself indispensable by design, not necessity. Allen had more to share. He told me the private equity firm that owns Veltria is planning to sell, and they've been preparing for this for over a year. Graham was brought in specifically to slash costs and make the company look more profitable before the sale. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The push for standardization, the refusal to fund proper documentation, the sudden obsession with cutting senior staff expenses. It wasn't about improving the company. It was about dressing it up for a quick flip. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Allen closed his laptop. "Because I quit yesterday, and I'm not the only one. Half the IT department has walked out. The consultants estimate it'll take at least 6 months, maybe more, to get full functionality back." He hesitated, then added quietly, "And Veltria's biggest client, Westbrook Properties, is thinking about jumping ship. They've lost faith in the management system." I let that sink in. Westbrook accounted for almost 30% of Veltria's revenue. Losing them would be devastating, especially with a sale looming. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. Grinning, Allen said, "Actually, I was hoping Devlin might be hiring database administrators." Later that afternoon, I spoke with Lawrence about bringing Allen on board. He agreed immediately. We were building a team, brick by brick, with people who truly understood what it takes to build lasting systems. That evening, I got another call from Graham. His voice lacked its usual authority. "Victor, please, the situation's critical. Westbrook is threatening to terminate their contract. The board's questioning every decision I've made. We need your help." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Graham. I can't help you." "Name your price," he pleaded. "Anything." "It's not about money. It's about respect. Respect for experience and the work it takes to build something right the first time." Silence. Then, finally, "You knew this would happen," Graham said quietly. "You knew exactly what would break and when." "No, Graham. I knew what I built and what it took to maintain it. That's information I tried to share, many times." I ended the call feeling neither triumphant nor regretful, just a quiet certainty that some lessons only come through failure. The opportunity arrived sooner than I expected. 2 months into my role at Devlin Systems, Lawrence called me into his office. "I just got off the phone with Jeffrey Westbrook," he said, "the CEO of Westbrook Properties. They're officially terminating their contract with Veltria next month. They want to know if we can handle their portfolio." Westbrook Properties managed over 10,000 units across the Northeast. Taking them on would more than double Devlin's current operations. "I'm not sure we're ready for that scale," I admitted. "The new system is progressing, but only halfway there." Lawrence leaned forward. "What would it take to be ready if we had to?" I thought it over. 3 more senior engineers, dedicated server infrastructure, and at least 8 weeks of development. Even then, it would be tight. "Jeffrey's desperate," Lawrence said. "Veltria's failures are damaging their reputation with tenants. He's willing to give us 12 weeks and fund the infrastructure expansion." This was the moment, the turning point. If Devlin succeeded with Westbrook, we'd be a serious competitor. Failure could sink both companies. "Let me think through the architecture," I said. "I'll have a plan ready by tomorrow." That night, sleep eluded me. I sketched system diagrams, mapped out data migration paths, and worked through scaling challenges. By morning, I had a plan, ambitious but achievable, a hybrid approach to onboard Westbrook's properties in stages, minimizing disruption. When I presented it to Lawrence, he studied it closely. "This is solid," he said, "but I see you've included a substantial documentation phase that adds 3 weeks to the timeline." "It's non-negotiable," I replied. "That's where Veltria failed. We document everything from day one. We train the team on every component. No single points of failure." Lawrence nodded. "I trust your judgment. Let's move forward." The following weeks were intense. We hired 5 more engineers, including 2 who had recently left Veltria. Alan built a database migration tool to translate Veltria's data structure into our new system. I designed a modular architecture that could scale with Westbrook's needs. Halfway through the project, I received an email from Justin Bayou, the former owner's son who still sat on Veltria's board. "Victor, I want to apologize for how things ended. The board was misled about the consequences of letting you go. Graham has been removed as CTO. We're struggling to recover, and Westbrook's departure will hit us hard. If you ever want to come back, the door is open." I didn't reply. 10 weeks into our 12-week timeline, we were ready for a staged rollout. Westbrook's smallest region, 2,000 units in western New York, would migrate first. If successful, the rest would follow. The day before migration, Lawrence called me into his office again. A familiar figure waited, Jeffrey Westbrook himself. "So, you're the system architect?" Jeffrey said, rising to shake my hand. "Lawrence has told me a lot about you." "All good, I hope," he smiled. "He says you built something that won't crash every time we add a property, something that will grow with us." "That's the plan," I said. "I also hear you used to work for Veltria," he continued. I nodded, curious where this was headed. "They're in trouble, he said. "The private equity firm is trying to sell, but with Westbrook leaving and their system still broken, they're not finding many buyers." He paused. "Except one." "Who?" I asked, though I had an idea. "Devlin Systems," Lawrence said. "They're thinking about making an offer at a big discount compared to 6 months ago." I looked between them, processing what that meant. "If that happens," Jeffrey went on, "we'd want someone who knows both companies to lead the integration, someone who could salvage what's valuable from Veltria's infrastructure while transitioning everything to your new system." "Are you asking if I'd be willing to work on that?" I clarified. Lawrence nodded. "Only if the acquisition goes through and only if you're comfortable." I thought about the irony, the system I'd built, the people I'd trained, the company that discarded me, all potentially coming back under my leadership. "I'd be willing," I said finally. "But there's one condition. We do it right. Full documentation, proper training, no shortcuts." "Agreed," Lawrence said. "We've learned that lesson." As I made my way back to my office, I felt no urge for revenge or a sense of triumph, just a calm, simple satisfaction knowing that solid, honest work eventually makes itself known. Half a year later, I found myself standing in the lobby of what used to be Veltria Housing's headquarters. The sign had been replaced with one that read Devlin Integrated Property Management. The acquisition had gone through, but for less than a quarter of Veltria's valuation before I left. Lawrence and I moved through the workspace, exchanging greetings with former Veltria employees who had been retained to help with the transition. Some avoided meeting my gaze, clearly uncomfortable. Others smiled with genuine relief. And a handful, the ones who had worked closely with me over the years, acknowledged me with quiet nods of understanding. Graham was long gone, along with most of the executive team responsible for my firing. Justin Bayou remained, serving as a consultant, helping to smooth the handover with legacy clients. When we reached the server room, my old domain, I hesitated for a moment. Through the glass walls, I could see the blinking lights of the hardware I had specified, the very systems I had architected. "Want to step inside?" Lawrence offered. "No need," I replied. "We'll be migrating everything to the new infrastructure soon." Later, in the main conference room, the remaining Veltria staff gathered for an important announcement. Lawrence introduced me as the Chief Integration Officer, tasked with managing the technical consolidation. "Many of you already know Victor," he said. "He built the systems that powered this company for nearly 2 decades. Now he'll be leading the integration of our combined technologies into a platform stronger than either had alone." Scanning the room filled with familiar and new faces, I felt no desire to say, "I told you so." What purpose would that serve? Instead, I kept my remarks brief, focusing on the transition timeline, the resources available, and the commitment that no one would be left behind because of cost-cutting. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. A year after the acquisition, Devlin Integrated Property Management had become the largest property management firm in the Northeast. The migration was fully complete. Every property now ran on the system I had designed, thoroughly documented, adequately staffed, and running without issue. One crisp autumn morning, I drove to the office for a final meeting with Lawrence. The fiery red and gold leaves along Lake Ontario made a fitting backdrop to close this chapter, I reflected. "The board has approved your proposal," Lawrence said as I took my seat. "We're launching the Technical Education Division next quarter. You'll have full control to design the curriculum and hire instructors." This had been my non-negotiable condition for staying beyond the integration, not a fancier title or a bigger paycheck, but the chance to build a division dedicated to training future systems engineers and architects, teaching them not just coding, but how to create lasting, reliable systems. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "That means a great deal." "No, thank you," Lawrence replied warmly. "What you've created here is remarkable, not only the technology itself but the culture around it, the documentation, the knowledge sharing, and the commitment to quality rather than quick fixes." That afternoon, I packed up my integration office. Unlike my abrupt departure from Veltria, this was a carefully planned transition to a new role. As I boxed my belongings, Justin Bayou knocked softly on the door. "Got a moment?" he asked. We stepped out into the courtyard. "My father asked about you," he began. "He's retired down in Florida but still keeps up with company news. He was pleased to hear you're back, in a way." "How's Harold?" I inquired. "Doing well. Fishing a lot," Justin said with a smile. He paused before continuing. "He always said letting you go would be the company's biggest mistake. Seems he was right." I nodded, at a loss for words. "I've learned something from all this," Justin added thoughtfully. "Value isn't always obvious until it's gone." Driving home along the lake shore, I reflected on value, the worth of experience, the care taken, doing things right the first time, building systems to endure, and the people behind them. I never sought revenge. I didn't need to. I simply moved forward, creating something better, something that would outlast any fleeting decision or short-term thinking. Sometimes the best answer to being undervalued is to prove your worth elsewhere and let the results speak loudly on your behalf.